ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me to your equine conference today. I'm here to talk to you about the Livestock Information Programme, which is a groundbreaking new collaboration between the livestock sectors and government to deliver the next generation in traceability services with a data sharing ethos at its heart. A big thank you, Tim, your chair, for inviting me today, but also for the sponsorship and the leadership that you've provided to help to build the ambition for the Livestock Information Programme. Minette and Lord Gardiner, your previous speakers, have also been actively involved in this conversation for several years now and helped to have built the overall ambition and enthusiasm for the use of data in the way I'm going to describe today, and also to build the commitment that now underpins delivery of the programme. My name's Simon Hall. I'm the Programme Director for the Livestock Information Programme and also the Managing Director for a company called Livestock Information Limited, which is a new company that's part of the DEFRA group, but is quite an arm's length body and is embedded as close to industry as possible in order to help underpin conversations about data sharing and the exploitation of data over time. I'm an agriculturist by background. I grew up in and around livestock farms in Lancashire. I definitely got farming under my fingernails from an early age. I have a degree in agriculture, and I've worked in agriculture in this country and Australia for quite a few years. I joined the DEFRA group nearly 20 years ago, though, and I've been working in various parts of the DEFRA group, driving projects and programs and running services during that time, and I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to make a difference in such a great department. I have less familiarity with the equine sector, although I realise there are real parallels between the equine sector and what we're talking about in the livestock sectors, thanks in large part due to the great contributions and insight from Jan Rogers and Jeanette Allen, who have been actively part of our stakeholder group. I think I've also benefited probably from the equine sector in that I met my wife many years ago on a stables on a farm that I was working on, and one thing led to another. So I do have some tenuous connections to the equine sector. The Livestock Information Programme is looking to replace 3 traceability services for cattle, sheep and pigs in England with a single new multi-species service that is designed to collect data about animals and their keepership and their location, both now but also historically, so that we know what animals other animals have come into contact with and so on. And is aiming to do that in a way that enables that data to be combined with other data and to be exploited and shared by a number of parties. Animals in England move around quite frequently, more frequently than in many other parts of the world. Animals are traded between farms. They're often traded through a very vibrant and important livestock market economy, and we have a diverse abattoir sector as well. In that context, it's critically important that government, the Animal and Plant Health Agency, chief vets have got really good access to that data that gives them insight about how a disease might have spread, or if there's a food contaminant, where that might have come from and how to stop it quickly. And it's not only the data itself and the quality and the scope of the data, but it's also the speed of access to that data that is critically important. And we know that in our everydays now with track and trace in the context of COVID, identifying where an outbreak may be and being able to really restrict movements or to remove animals from the risk area is critically important. We have identified, though, in conversations with industry over the last 3 or 4 years, that industry shares almost exactly the same need of exactly the same data sets to underpin insight in the industry itself. So when animals are bought and sold, there is a real opportunity to use data to improve our ability to evidence product provenance, or to differentiate products, or to get health information about animals into the ring or into a trading conversation, and indeed to provide information that can underpin customer confidence. And most of those data sets depend on the building blocks of data about animals and their keepership and or their location. And critically, the need for the use of that data is often in the live trading environment. So industry, like government, share the need to be able to collect basic data in a really timely way, collect that into systems that can then present that data and make it available for use in a near real-time environment. And it is that concept, that win-win, that has led to the creation of the Livestock Information Programme and its current guise in England, and also the commitment to setting up Livestock Information Limited, which is a company that, as I said earlier, is part of the DEFRA group, but is embedded very close to industry. We're a subsidiary of the English levy body, and tightly tied, therefore, to how the industry works. And the concept is that this organisation is charged with building a data and a technology environment, but also creating a governance environment that allows the conversation about how we can best share data in a responsible way in order to unlock benefits, but without driving unintended or adverse consequences as a result. There are some really interesting questions for us within this around how industry can start to drive the quality and timeliness of traceability data, more so, or perhaps in the first instance, ahead of legislation that will require people to conform with a certain regime. So, for example, would the use of, I don't know, whole life traceability for red tractor assurance, for example, if the market was willing to pay more for animals that can be guaranteed as being whole life assured, does that mean that more farmers are more inclined to record details about individual animals before they move? They're the kind of questions, but also the kind of opportunities that probably stand in front of us, and what's the best way to affect the changes that we want to see. In terms of what we're building, we are building a distinct and modern data collection and data analytical capability for livestock in England. We are in the process of creating a distinct cloud environment. By distinct, I mean separate from government IT infrastructure, separate from industry IT infrastructure, purpose designed to collect and hold data about animals, the statutory data, but also potentially bring in commercial data as well. The cloud environment itself is based on principles about resilience, scalability, flexibility, value for money, but also security. The environment itself is being designed to be distinct, but also to be inherently open, so that we can freely exchange information into government or into industry or from those two places. We are building a new multi-species traceability engine in England. So a multi-species system with the rules that can be tailored to meet the individual species, and the user interfaces, the websites and so on that go along with that, that allow farmers to enter information digitally, but also information that's captured on paper to be entered into the system as well. We do have ambitions collectively to eliminate paper entirely from the data collection process. In the first instance, the systems will be able to support paper, but in time we've got conversations around, well, how do we phase that out and move to this fully electronic way of reporting? We're also building a really powerful data analytics capability. This is a piece of technology that will take essentially a copy of the data from our traceability system. It can also hold copies of data from elsewhere, and will organize and optimize that data so that it really is in the best state possible to enable reporting. We've been working with colleagues at a UK level. There are parallel projects to the Livestock Information Programme running in Scotland and in Wales and in Northern Ireland. And we've been having conversations about how we make sure those systems work well together when an animal crosses a border, the information travels with it, for example. But we have agreed in principle that we're going to use this data analytics capability to make sure we've got a copy of UK level data that can be used to derive the right level of insight at a UK level to underpin customer confidence and disease control and so on. But that particular data set will be governed through a UK customer board that we're in the process of setting up right now. We have demonstrated in England the power of this capability. We have a historic data set of cattle data in England now in our data environment, and we have a daily update to that data. We have, in a proof of concept, combined that data with data from an abattoir, and we've, in weeks and in days and weeks worth of effort, have proved that we can bring those data sets together and generate new, very reliable, but also very detailed insights. For example, about cattle performance by breed, looking at end customer quality, or end product quality, I should say. And so we're really showing that we can unlock the potential of data, and we don't need to wait for the new data collection systems. What we need is access to contemporary data sets from existing systems, whether they're government systems or industry systems. What we're learning in the process, though, is that we need to be extremely careful, but also extremely open around how we make decisions about who we share data with and for what reason, and so on. And this is where Livestock Information Limited as a design construct, I think, is really powerful, in that we as a company are a service provider, but our governance is really driven by decision makers in both government, but also decision making in the agricultural industry, AHDB, but also a wider industry stakeholder group that that Tim and Jeanette and Jan are all plugged into, so are formally wired into the governance process around data sharing and so on. This whole environment has been built to be flexible and scalable. The vision is that we need to deliver the change really well for cattle and for sheep and for pigs, but potentially there's scope to offer services into other sectors in the future, whether that be equine or another sector. There's lots that we've learned about so far on our journey. We've been in delivery for about 18 months now. A couple of watch points. The transition of existing traceability systems that are part of the national infrastructure and used for gathering data about animals, and transitioning those to a new system is a undertaking not to be underestimated. It's extremely complicated. There are lots of moving parts. There are lots of sensitivities. The relationship across UK administrations is critically important, driving parallel programs that all respect devolution, devolved responsibilities for traceabilities, but also the need to have data systems that talk together on a day-to-day basis and can aggregate and make UK data available is really important. We've also learned that from a data perspective, once we have data and we understand it, there's lots that we can do comparatively easily. And that's the paradigm really that we're looking to unlock. And we're also learning that creating formal governance between industry and government has surely got to be a really important part of the tool set, a really important proposal of how we decide to share what data with whom, and to make sure that we're starting to unlock real value rather than undermining and disrupting how the commercial marketplace works. So you're going to hear in a minute from Stewart Everett. Stewart from Equine Register has been working with me on the livestock program. He's been helping us to work through some of the data quality and some of the integration challenges that we face. He's been a great part of the team. So look forward to hearing what Stewart's got to say, and then I look forward to talking to you as part of the Q&A session very shortly. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Our second slot here is taken by Stewart Everett, Chief Executive of the Equine Register, who has spoken at a number of these NEF gatherings in the recent past. We have asked Stewart specifically to consider innovation and cooperation. Stewart, over to you.
Good morning, Your Royal Highness, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks, Tim, for the introduction. Also, thanks for the invitation to speak at NEF again, albeit in a very different way this year. It feels like the last time I left the house was NEF last year, and what a year it's been. But ever the optimist, I now no longer need to explain the importance of biosecurity, border security, disease surveillance and control, or indeed what they mean. And we all know what an epidemiologist does now. There have been magnificent demonstrations across the world during this crazy time of how critical digital is to enabling good decisions to be made in real time to control disease spread, and in some cases stop disease in its tracks. We've also seen what a failure to have that accurate information to hand in a usable format can do on both health and welfare, and also operationally on the ground. But we're still exposed. you only have to look at the equine herpes outbreak in Spain last weekend, which is still spreading. So I want to share some of the opportunities to implement digital, to protect people and equines, to promote good rapid decision making and reduce transactional friction, especially at borders, by interoperable digital systems. But first, some context about us. We're recognised as global leaders in equine lifetime identification and traceability systems, and we work with governments and industries, but we focus around national identification, data verification, safeguarding, lifetime traceability, but interoperable platforms. And actually the important words there are integrated and interoperable. It's about connecting people to up-to-date information in real time so that they can make good decisions. It was good to hear Simon speak, and we really enjoy the work that we do with LI. It's been absolutely fascinating, and some of the things that we also do aside from the equine is we integrate, rationalize and generally wrangle the massive amounts of data they have available to them to demonstrate the groundbreaking insights and operational value that can be derived from it, particularly during COVID. We currently work with closely with DEFRA in the UK to improve the effectiveness of the current CED, and continue to work closely with government and industry today to develop more effective integrated systems that support digital equine ID and lifetime traceability. And there have been some major progresses in this area. So if you look at the National Chip Check as well, that is about to open up and do some other things too. It's going to give, you've got the opportunity to give equine owners the ability to view and update the details of themselves. And you've got new police access coming in and various other things to aid in enforcement and also welfare on the ground. But don't think of the system as individual applications. Think of it as an interoperable connected platform. It provides real-time, accurate, verified information, and it connects the people so they can make the right decisions. It also enables the right actions to be taken by industry and government, and most importantly, the people on the ground. If you look at the guys around the outside of that circle, you look at the user groups there, that's by no means all of them. You can start to see how powerful that is from a data sharing perspective. And it's an integrated platform that exists, and the system is ready now. So if you look at some of the things that we do and support, we focus very much around connecting the data, as I've said, and the people in the organizations for lifetime traceability, biosecurity, border security, disease surveillance and control, food chain security, enforcement, health and welfare, identification, fraud detection, compliance, resource targeting, scenario planning, all those kinds of things. You want biosecurity at events across borders. You want to ensure that people can also support COVID safe distancing. People aren't having to swap bits of paper around with each other, come into contact with each other. They can remain at a distance, but have the information piped into them in real time. Now, there are powerful opportunities ahead. There's the new animal health regs, there's the animal health and welfare pathway. And essentially the path away from paper is now laid. The whole world is moving towards digital, and that's governments and industry. There will be a transaction, but the new regs are a huge step forward. They provide the statutory framework to support the evolution to digital. As we start to develop free trade agreements with countries across the world, it stands to reason that evidencing equine movements, health status, biosecurity is going to need to be secure and digital. It's the only way it can be achieved. The UK has the opportunity and the existing digital infrastructure to lead and deliver all this. Failure to do it doesn't really bear thinking about. So some of the things the new regs support: disease surveillance and control, safe social distancing, as I've said, traceability, movements, moving on digital documentation, enforcement, checking digital documentation, borders checking digital documentation, ease and targeting of enforcement, welfare. If you look at semi-ferals, for example, and the guys that are doing their jobs down with the Dartmoors and everybody else, you've got these people have been doing the same things for hundreds of years. And the law, the transactional ability they'd fallen between a gap there. But now there is the opportunity to drive digital on the ground for those people too. There's behavioural pattern recognition. There's real-time verified information. There's frictionless trade with improved animal welfare. There's also the benefits of if your horse gets stolen or lost, you get to be able to reunite yourself with it. There's much more opportunity to go out and send the word out, start to drive the reunification, but also start to drive just good behavior on the ground. Then you've got the positive evolution for PIs and Studbooks, and the opportunity for them to reevaluate their businesses. And look at what our colleagues are doing at Weatherbys, at BHS and AES. I mean, there's some massive work going on there. So what's in it for me? I can hear everybody says this to us. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Look at how it can support, how digital can support and enable you and your business. Look at how your systems can link to everybody else's, and you can start to share data to streamline your processes and streamline what's going on, but keep the data up to date in a central place. It doesn't matter if you're involved, what you're involved in, sport, industry, research, any of this. Everybody in the 21st century needs to be connected and needs to be moving the data backwards and forwards between them. We're more than happy to advise and help shape your thinking and approach with this. It's a complex area. It doesn't have to be difficult, but it is a complex area, and we're happy to provide a sounding board. In addition to the systems themselves, there's a lot of work being done around the governance, access, the interoperability of credible systems for data exchange standards and agreements to share data, etc. But don't wait. Digital transformation takes time. Depending on how far along you are that process, it takes time. So I would make a start. I encourage everybody to make a start as quickly as possible. So some pointers. Make everything interoperable. What that means is don't become a digital cul-de-sac or an island. Don't just sit there with your data. Don't just sit there thinking that because you can pass it inside your office or pass it to each other or whatever, that's enough. It's not enough. You need to be getting things in and out and moving it around to actually achieve the benefits. It's also important to look at what digital isn't. Digital isn't typing into web forms and then printing off a PDF or sending a PDF to people. That's not digital, that's typing. Digital is the transfer, receiving, uploading, downloading, amending of data in real time. And the aims of digital should always be to make things better, to make things quicker, faster, cheaper, easier, more tied up, more real time, everything. And it's completely possible to do it. The technology is available. If you look at some of the ways that digital is helping vets at the second, they can use Bluetooth scanners straight into the system. There's no rekeying. They can speak things in. Everyone can start to verify themselves once, just once, not every time you go in. They can start to check. There's audit trails. The whole systems work on and offline, because we all know that horses are up mountains and in fields. They're not sat in offices unless something terrible has happened. There's also owners alerts that can be delivered to them. We're working at the second with Gloucestershire Police on a trial to see if they can start to target crime alerts to people on the ground, to also help tie them in with welfare, and to also help them reunite people with loose horses. There's also disease outbreaks that can be targeted straight to owners or keepers where their horses are. This is really important stuff that can change everything that's going on. So essentially, there are huge opportunities ahead. The supportive legislation that's coming is underpinned by an existing world-beating digital infrastructure. All you have to do is go and get involved and find out. But thank you very much for your time today, and I'll hand back over to Tim.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. It gives you a flavour of what's to happen and what's to come. We've got a few minutes for a panel session, and I'm delighted that, as Simon has highlighted, the Livestock Information Limited is an England-only activity, but with the intentions of being as joined up UK-wide as possible. And therefore, I'm delighted that we got Sheila Voas, the chief vet from Scotland, joining us. So to give a balanced perspective, if you like, to make sure it's as wide-ranging as possible. There've been really quite a lot of questions come in. I suppose one, Simon, that seems to be a very strong one is about data ownership and freedom of information and all that sort of stuff. Can you just talk through how you're going to handle that?
Yes, absolutely, Tim. So this is a critical issue, isn't it? And I referred to it in my presentation. We need to look both at a commercial perspective and also a government and a personal information perspective. So I have a duty of care as managing director to make sure that we're treating personal data responsibly in line with GDPR regulation and so on. I think there are more grey areas around sharing of commercial data. So if it's permissible to share personal data, but it's commercially sensitive, how does that work? And the way that we've established governance around livestock information is to make sure that the industry is able to essentially commission us to expose value in line with industry conversations about what data they want to see shared. And there's forums being established led by the AHDB, the English levy body, to drive those conversations. But also there's cross-fertilisation between those industry conversations and government as well. And government will absolutely have a role to play in setting policy direction for data sharing as well. So largely we will act on instruction in terms of what data to share, but we'll be able to provide some technical expertise to help to inform those conversations. I think it's fair to say, though, Tim, that to date, we've all been aware of the need to manage these conversations well, but technical barriers that have prevented the sharing of data have made those rather academic. As I described earlier, now that we've got cattle data into the system, those conversations are becoming real. So it's really important that we really design how this works very carefully.
A number of questions about who's going to be responsible for data entry. Is it going to be vets and government officials, or is it going to be farmers and horse owners, or anybody?
In the context of livestock information, it will be the same as now. So farmers are responsible for entering their data, but also markets and abattoirs, basically the keeper of an animal. And there's some pretty clear legislative frameworks that people need to operate within. So this is a new suite of technology to underpin the current regime, but we aim to move to more of a digital way of working, because that's the way to get better quality and more timely data. We need to make that as easy as possible for farmers and keepers.
Okay, thanks. And just a final one, and Sheila may like to comment. How is this England-only activity going to morph into a UK-wide so that there is one database-ish?
You want me to go first?
You go first, Sheila.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Although livestock information is England only, the UK Central Equine Database is, as it says, covering all the different parts. And our system through Scott Equine will feed into that and receive information back from that. So although it's complicated and it appears a little fragmented, it shouldn't be, because there's really good cooperation between all the different teams working on this to ensure that it's joined up seamlessly.
Okay, thank you. Simon, do you want to add anything? That seems pretty clear.
I think it's clear, just to reassure, we're working together at a policy level across each administration and a delivery level. What we're doing is very complicated. We're upgrading systems, we're disaggregating some GB services to devolve ones. We shouldn't underestimate how complicated it is, but we've got the right teams of people looking at this, working together, and we're making decisions. We're moving this forward, designing how this is going to work. The collective voice in the wider UK room has been traceability is all about quality. We've got an opportunity now with 4 parallel programs to really drive an improvement across all of species that can put us in a good place for the future.
Okay, thank you for that. Stewart, but I'll get a question into you, linking into Simon's presentation. How or is the intention, because a number of people have asked, is the central equine database, how is that going to feed into livestock information, or is it not?
So, I mean, we need to bring Simon in on this as well, but our understanding at the second is that we work really closely together. I believe there's aspirations within livestock, as Simon pointed out in his presentation, to possibly involve other species in the fullness of time. But right now, working with LI the way that we do as well, we know the focus is absolutely foursquare around cows and pigs and sheep, isn't it, Simon? So, and it's just a question of open dialogue and communications and working out the simplest and easiest, most frictionless way to do this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Our focus is on livestock, and we've got a way to go yet. So we've got a lot of hard work to do to make sure we can prove that we can collect good quality, timely data, but also make sure that we can present that data for use in lots of different ways. The principle is, though, that we're building a modern data environment here that should be flexible for the future. So could we accommodate other species in the future? Potentially, yes. The direction, though, needs to come from DEFRA. So we aren't a company with our own ambition to grow. We're part of the DEFRA group, and we'll act on instruction, really. So, you know, DEFRA will consider how it wants to operate equine services in the future in combination, you know, in the context of the livestock services that it's already responsible for. So we're creating options rather than necessarily a hard direction, I think it's fair to say.
Okay. That's pretty clear. Thank you very much for that. Another area that seems to be getting people quite interested is the whole question about digital stable and how that's going to is that going to be replaced or complement within LI Limited, or how's that going to evolve?
I think we've probably answered the question in the previous really. I think there's a great opportunity for us to learn. Equine rolling out an app means that you're going first, so I think there's lots that we can learn from looking at your experience in equine. You know, the fundamental challenge here, or the thing that we're trying to get to, is across all of the species, we want as much data as possible about every animal to be in our systems when an animal moves or before it moves. And anything that we can learn across those sectors, we'll be lapping up.
I think that just to come in on the back of that, that's the key to this is the data. The key to this isn't the access points or the whatever that is. I mean, that's a different conversation. It's an entirely different piece of the puzzle. But actually, what LI are designing at the second and what everybody else is designing at the second is a way to get the data to move towards people. Okay. So actually, it's just about feeds at the end of the day.
Okay, and then there's various other questions that are coming in. So will this effectively mean that horses are livestock and all will need a premises reference number, i.e. landowners will have to declare equines on their land? And we're getting into all sorts of hairy territory.
I refer you back to my previous question. We're providing a technology suite that may offer some options in the future. That's all we're doing here.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind this is a livestock database for traceability, it's actually going to be quite important.
It will be
Sorry, Sheila, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was just going to add to that a little bit. Horses are already considered livestock for certain purposes, particularly under EU legislation. And whilst I can't speak for the rest of the UK, Scottish ministers are very keen to remain aligned with EU legislation. And part of that will be the animal health regulation, which comes into force next month, which does require a degree of registration of premises, including those where equines are kept. So certainly in Scotland, it's likely that there will be a need for registration at some point in the future, but the definition of equines as livestock will remain as it is at the moment, where in some circumstances they're considered livestock and in others they're considered pets or companion animals.
Yeah.
And just to finish the other side of that piece off, if and when holding registrations come in, the system is able to support that, because we've had visibility that is very probably a potential for some time now, and it would have been silly not to build in the capability to be switched on at any point that it needs to be. It's a huge part of traceability, but the policy direction is somebody else's area.
Yeah. To bring it right back to fundamentals, as a vet, I want to know where the horses are, so Absolutely. That if we have an outbreak of something nasty, African horse sickness, say, I know where they are and how to deal with the disease. So it's the data that's important. And I'd far rather know where the horse is than that it's owned by Sheikh Mohammed or somebody else. So I'd like people to remember the fundamentals of why we're doing this, not see it just as a piece of bureaucracy.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Sheila. Thank you for that. Stu, there's one very specific to you. Please, Can you confirm whether a transfer of ownership on the CED would confirm that this is regarded as a legal purchase of a horse in a court of law? The breed society who issue pedigree breed papers requires the passport to ratify change of owner. Theft, divorce or death can cause problems.
So the only people that can change the ownership status on the CED are the PIOs, breed societies, the PIOs, yeah. So the CED is just a replication of the data that already exists, but it's a consolidation of it and a check-in and a balancing. One of the things that we provide in there through the digital stable and through various other means is for a service to show the PIOs that the person is the person, right? So this is really important because right now anyone can technically phone up, do things. There isn't the level of rigor at a kind of digital level and also at a biometric level that actually identifies that I am me and I am telling you something. So if I am me and I'm telling you something, then there is a level of confidence already, and then it's up to the PIOs to do their due diligence on that they do anyway in the course of their daily business, to say, actually, fair enough, Stu's just bought that horse or sold that horse to Sheila, and off we go. The CED doesn't get involved in that. The CED just then takes a feed of that information and that transaction, and it sits there. Where policy is going on legal ownership and everything else, that has been a minefield for a number of years. I mean, a huge minefield. So I don't know, that's a policy decision, but the CED just reflects the transactional data at the PIO level.
Okay, thank you. Sheila, do you want to add anything to that, or is...
Just to say that we have no plans to change that. It will remain the responsibility of the PIO to enter the data, and we will take that as the truth.
And there's a question in about the number of PIOs and attempts to rationalise and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure I want to go there, but does anyone want to comment? Or because we are where we are, and I can't really see that changing in the short term.
Do you know what? The one thing I'll say on this is a real moment for the PIOs to evolve and to embrace this. That was part of what I was trying to get over in my piece that I did earlier. This is the real moment. If you look at some of the work that BHS are doing, particularly, and AES, and there are a number of others that are following close behind them, this is the moment that can start to revolutionize their business, their data integrity, their process flows, owner support, animal welfare. It's a cornerstone of everything, and it shouldn't be looked at as a problematic thing or a draconian thing. This is exactly the opposite to that. This is a new thing. This is how we all behave in the rest of the world at the rest of the time. And it's wholly appropriate that that kind of stuff happens. And everyone is here to help. So whether there's 81 PIOs or 5 or 30 or 1 or 72 is irrelevant. What is relevant is everyone is able to do what they need to do in their course of business and be part of supplying this data in the right thing. And it's policy decision for the rest of the numbers. I have no idea about that side of things. We just enable people to share data in a secure manner.
Okay. And there's a further question, and I think to a certain extent Simon's talked about it. GDPR and data confidentiality, bearing in mind how quickly things are moving there, can you just give some reassurance to a number of people who are asking questions about sort of history of animals and how that can be protected, particularly with change of ownership and that sort of stuff?
Another question for me, Tim.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I mean, this is our business. We are a data company that's been set up to manage data. So we're building systems and environments and so on. We're also building data protection and data sharing processes, working with an extremely comprehensive governance wrap from both government and industry. This is the purpose of the being, really. Not only creating a data environment to share data, but also all of the controls around that to take that responsibility seriously. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that we're starting the journey in the right way.
Yeah, go on, Stuart.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with what Simon's saying. This is what we have to do. This is not a thing that's, oh, we might put some protections in, or we might do this, or should we just ignore that? This is absolutely the foundation and bedrock of everything that you have to do if you're behaving with people's data and you're moving people's data around. This is not an option. It's not a question. It's not a nice to have. If you don't rock in with this at the beginning, you can't work and you can't do this stuff. and it is unbelievably serious. So it's all about permissions, it's all about policy, it's about compliance, it's about security, and it's about verification. And actually part of what we've built for people is a platform that enables them in their businesses to conduct that part, that problematic and secure part of the transaction. So they're safe in the knowledge that they can then work with the data they've got. We're not trying to control the data. We're not trying to stop the data. Just, you can have confidence the data is this, over to you now, and off you go. Yeah, rather than where is this all coming in from? There's far more likelihood of breaches happening in an ungoverned environment than there is in the kind of environments that we're talking about trying to establish in order to protect people.
And just to add to that from the government side, as the data information owner, the information asset owner, the number of hoops I have to jump through to ensure that data is safe before we can collect it, to make sure that the systems are in place to facilitate collection securely, is unbelievable. It takes a remarkable amount of time and energy just to put that in place before we ever start to collect any data.
It's fair to say, Tim, that there's a tension here, isn't there? There's a tension between a desire to exploit and to disrupt positively and to drive innovation, and the need to protect and to be responsible. And you know, from the conversations we've had over the last 3 or 4 years, that tension has always been very visible to us. And again, that's helped to inform the design constructs of, you know, let's have a data company that whose job is to think about this and a governance wrap to consider it. But it's going to need to be a combination of government policy around data sharing and the industry's desire to provide leadership.
Okay, just one more question because we're going to run out of time. This is from a vet. Currently, equine patient history is unable to be shared with a new owner without the previous owner's permission, as this is a breach of GDPR. However, with this new data technology, could patient history be attached to each individual horse?
So there's two answers to this. The first answer is what is currently happening is completely legal. That's what's supposed to happen. That it doesn't get shared because it's got GDPR information against it. But there is nothing to stop the previous owner choosing to allow the next owner to have access to that data. Or the next vet. So that comes down to the permission side of things, and that's part of the sophistication of the platform. But it is their right to not allow that. It's just in the instances that Simon's talking about where we have this friction and this tension between what everyone wants to be able to do and what everyone is allowed to do. If you give people the permission to act in a way that is in accordance with their beliefs and wishes, they have the opportunity to start to do some magic things, but under their control. So it won't change, or it can change, but only with people's control and permission.
Okay, thank you. And we've got one comment that someone has put in. What a really good positive session. So thank you very much, for all three of you, and how everyone sees this as a really, really important way forward.